I started this channel with a video about human design manifestors, of which I am one. I am a 2/4 emotional manifestor. And then I didn't make any other videos. And then I came back and I added videos, which are pretty much only for me, but public. And yet, I do think that this process of deconditioning as a person, and this process of the human design experiment, which, you know, as an aside, before I even name the topic of the video, I just want to say that it doesn't help human design to have the backstory that it does. I, for one, have no issue with the backstory, but I also grew up with a mom who said that there were spirit horses reporting on my every movement back to our soothsayer who lived in San Francisco and was 106 years old and called my mom whenever I did something bad. So my worldview it was very primed for something like human design, and actually human design feels much more rigorous and scientific and calculated than anything that I grew up understanding about how this world works. But on the other hand, there are a lot of people out there who would immediately discount it because of the backstory. However, at the core of human design is something so simple and something so powerful and necessary for today, which is the basic appreciation of differentiation. The basic appreciation that we are not all the same, and that there are strategies and strategies and ways to make decisions. So ways to interrelate and ways to make decisions that are worth experimenting with, and that if those strategies remove resistance from your life, then maybe there's some truth, and it would be wise to continue making or normalizing those strategies in your life. So for all of the manifestors out there, which maybe in everyone's personal life feels like few and far between, but in the larger scheme of things, 8% of a population of like wherever we are at, like 8 billion or 9 billion, I'm sorry, I don't know, many, many billion is, it's like a billion people. Is it? It's like 600 million or 700 million, I think. That's a shit ton of people. And according to human design, manifestors are some of the most conditioned. And I want to jump right into a specific topic, which is also one of the pillars of how to operate correctly as a manifestor. And that is informing, which is the manifestor strategy, is the only strategy that is not natural. It is a completely learned behavior. And in my opinion, that's why so many manifestors fail at removing resistance from their life, why so many manifestors fall into anger and kind of fall into the opposite of peace, because the world is given reason to continue to be suspicious of them and to continue to want to stop them in their tracks. And I felt this really strongly over my life, but it's a strategy that has not, because it's not natural, it hasn't naturally emerged in my life. And I recently was on a trip with a generator. Generators are really tough for us because generators are all natural. Like everything about a generator is like listening to the noise of your gut and, responding sacredly, and the world comes to you. And when you're with one of those people, as a manifestor, you tend to completely overextend because it's such a magnetic pull. And then the problem happens where, because you're also a manifestor, or because you're a manifestor, you are definitely not one to go with the flow and be pulled into responding to the world like your generator friend whose aura you're enveloped in. And that makes informing all the more important and all the more uncomfortable, because you're basically creating a direction which could very much go counter-directional to the generator's impulses or feelings or, sacral response. But it is so important as a manifestor that you remember and that you overcome the feeling of wrong timing or of wanting things to just be understood from other people's perspective. I think that is, for me anyway, that is the biggest fallacy, and the one that has been the hardest to drop, is thinking, hoping, wanting the people around me to just kind of understand and give me space. People don't give space. This is the world we live in. People don't give you space if you don't ask for it as a manifestor. People might, they might avoid you, but that's not the kind of space that you want. You want a respectful space. You don't want to be ostracized, because at the end of the day, you still, in order to get things done, you need people to feel good working with you, to feel that you are, if you are, making a direction, that you communicate that direction, and that you're not just acting without any kind of warning. And that's what informing is. So I want to take this to something that is a bit outside of maybe the human design language, but just to kind of ground it in relatable experience, especially if you're a manifestor. The language of boundaries. I will be the first to admit that I've wanted boundaries to be some kind of almost tangible, energetic shell that just kind of exists around me at all times, so that I, without having to directly communicate, could just be an obvious self-contained unit. So I wouldn't even have to deal with people trying to get into my bubble, where they would just see the bubble and they'd be like, oh, the bubble has a mission. The bubble is on a mission. Let's let the bubble be the bubble. That is not how it works, though, in my experience. And where informing really makes a difference in a manifestor's life is in creating the bubble through the word. If you don't inform, which, remember, informing is a verbal process, which is related to the throat, which is what makes us manifestors, that we have an energetic center connected to the throat. So informing is what other types need to even see our bubble. And if we don't inform, the bubble is not there. This, for me, is life-changing to recognize, to experiment with, to test out. The difference that it makes to communicate something and create a bubble, which again is like, it's for the other people to help there be a sort of agreement that there's a bubble there in the first place. And I should say boundary if bubble makes you think of Powerpuff Girls or something, which is also fine. But I'm talking about the agreement that you have a sort of boundary of needs, and no one is going to know those without you communicating it. So an example would be, I was on a trip recently for 8 days with a very intense generator, like a pure generator. And he definitely does not ascribe to human design. He's not, he wouldn't ascribe to anything that is remotely astrological or even based in like, I don't even think he believes that there's any kind of biofield or anything like that. So yeah, there could be no disclaimers. There had to be just pure enactment of the manifestor strategy. And for the first few days I failed. I experienced the desire to melt into this generator and just kind of live as a generator and respond to everything. And all it did was it completely burned me out. And by day 4, I was nothing. I had less groundedness than a dust mite. Like, I was just floating around. And this generator was like, whoa, where did you go? There's not a person here. There's no personality anymore. There's no direction. There's just kind of this drifting nebulous form. And so, of course, we got into a fight where there was just a lot of stuff coming up around lack of communication. That clearly I was experiencing something negative, but this generator had no idea how to read it because I was just unreadable. And this is not the first time that I've been told I'm unreadable. I think for any manifestor listening to this, that's probably something you've heard the most of, I just can't read you. And that's because we have to say. We can't wait to be read. We have to inform how things are. And better yet, we shouldn't wait, especially if you're an emotional manifestor, we shouldn't wait until things get bad to then inform. What should happen is we should know upfront what it is that we need, and we should inform, especially if our party is a generator, inform about the container. And it may not make sense to the generator, it may not be comfortable, but it will resolve all of the issues that could unravel if there is too much of manifestor melting into generator. And this is where it gets really uncomfortable because, again, informing is not a natural strategy. There's nothing fun about being the party pooper coming into a road trip and saying, by the way, I wake up at this time, I do this, I will do this, this is something that I do this, I do that. It's like, oh God, it's such a buzzkill. It's such a buzzkill. But I promise you, by practicing this enough times, you'll realize that your feeling of peace and your feeling of being given the space to be yourself, and also informing people that you are not going to just, informing people of who you are, honestly. It's like, they can't read you, so you're telling them who you are, and it sucks that they can't read you, but it's still better than being misread or just like completely becoming a non-person, which is kind of what happens to me if I don't inform. I just become like a ball of tension, and then I die, and everything goes rancid, and everyone dies, and then the whole world dies, and then the universe dies, and then we're back at the Big Bang, but then nothing bangs because it's all dead, and it's all my fault, and it's all your fault because you're a conditioned manifestor, and I'm a conditioned manifestor, and if we don't inform, we are responsible for the total destruction of all universes. Thanks for watching.